What would you do if the man who builds rockets to Mars stopped everything? His billions, his dreams, his legacy, just to save a life. On an ordinary day in Los Angeles, Elon Musk made a decision that would ripple through the world, not because of a business deal, a tweet, or a new invention, but because of a single, heart-stopping moment on the street. It was a crisp afternoon in Los Angeles, the kind where the golden sunlight dances off the glass skyscrapers, and the city hums with its own chaotic rhythm. Elon Musk, dressed in his signature plain t-shirt and jeans, had decided to skip the boardrooms and headlines for a quiet walk. For once, he wasn't thinking about Neuralink, Tesla, or SpaceX. He just needed air. Real, unscripted, unfiltered air. His security team had reluctantly allowed him to slip out alone, but Elon didn't care. The man who spent his days revolutionizing the world liked these fleeting moments of anonymity, where he could blend into the crowd and just watch. As he turned the corner of a busy intersection, something unusual caught his eye. Across the street, a small commotion had started. A boy, no older than 15, was standing frozen in the middle of the sidewalk. His face was pale, and his eyes darted wildly, like a deer caught in headlights. Nearby, a police officer stood rigid, his hand hovering near the holster of his gun. "Don't move," the officer barked, his voice cutting through the noise of traffic and chatter like a knife. Elon stopped mid-step. His heart skipped a beat. The boy, dressed in a worn-out hoodie and sneakers that had seen better days, raised his hands slowly. His voice cracked as he pleaded, "I didn't do anything. Please, I didn't do anything." The crowd began to gather. Phones were out, recording the scene, but nobody stepped forward. The tension was suffocating. The officer's stance screamed authority, but the boy's trembling frame radiated pure fear. Elon's instincts kicked in. This wasn't the kind of scene he could ignore. He wasn't a man who thrived on sidelines or silence. Something about the boy's face, the sheer terror, struck him deeply. The officer's voice grew louder. "Step back. Now." The boy, shaking uncontrollably, shifted ever so slightly, barely moving. But the officer's fingers twitched closer to his weapon. Elon knew this moment, the razor-thin edge where everything could spiral into tragedy. Without thinking, Elon moved. Crossing the street in long, purposeful strides, he called out, his voice calm but commanding, "Hey, what's going on here?" The crowd's collective gasp was almost audible as heads turned to recognize him. Elon Musk wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this. The officer hesitated, momentarily distracted by the sudden appearance of one of the most famous faces in the world. Elon stepped closer, keeping his hands visible and his voice steady. "I'm sure we can figure this out without anyone getting hurt, right?" The boy, still trembling, looked at Elon as if he were a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. "Sir, please step back," the officer warned, though his tone wavered slightly. It wasn't every day someone like Elon Musk intervened in a street-side confrontation, but Elon didn't back down. Instead, he kept his eyes on the officer, his expression unwavering. "I get it, you're just doing your job, but let's make sure this doesn't end in something we'll all regret, okay?" For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The air was thick with tension, every second stretching into eternity. Elon's heart pounded in his chest, but his exterior remained calm, collected. The officer's gaze flickered between Elon and the boy. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone, but something about Elon's calmness, his presence, seemed to diffuse the situation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officer stepped back. "Fine," he muttered, his voice clipped, "but I need to see some ID from the kid." The boy exhaled sharply, tears streaming down his face as he fumbled in his pocket for his wallet. Elon placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's okay, kid. You're safe now." And just like that, the moment passed. The crowd slowly began to disperse, murmurs of disbelief and awe rippling through the air. Elon stayed by the boy's side. And just like that, the moment passed. The crowd slowly began to disperse, murmurs of disbelief and awe rippling through the air. Elon stayed by the boy's side. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jason." Elon nodded, giving him a reassuring smile. All right, Jason, what happened back there? Why was that officer after you? Jason wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, his words tumbling out in shaky fragments. I didn't do anything. I swear. I was just walking back from the store. But then this guy in a suit started yelling. He said I took his wallet. I didn't take anything. I was just trying to get home. Elon's brows furrowed as he listened. He glanced at the small plastic bag by Jason's feet. Inside was a single loaf of bread and a small carton of milk. Bare necessities. Not the kind of haul you'd expect from someone causing trouble. Before Elon could respond, a voice chimed in from behind. Excuse me, Mr. Musk? Elon turned to see a young woman, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her face a mix of awe and concern. I saw the whole thing, she said, stepping closer. That guy in the suit was yelling, but I didn't see this kid do anything. He just froze when the officer came over. Elon nodded in thanks, his mind racing. Jason didn't look like a thief. He looked like a scared, hungry kid caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Where do you live, Jason? Elon asked, his tone gentle. Jason hesitated again, then pointed down the street. A shelter. It's not far. Elon's heart clenched. This boy, no older than his own kids, was out here navigating a world that had already stacked the odds against him. A surge of anger coursed through him. Not at Jason, not even at the officer, but at the system that let this happen. All right, Elon said, standing up and offering his hand. Let's get you home. Jason blinked up at him, disbelief written all over his face. You're coming with me? Of course, Elon said with a small smile. Nobody should have to face this alone. As they walked, Jason opened up, the words spilling out like he'd been holding them back for years. He talked about his mom, who'd passed away when he was 10, and his dad, who disappeared soon after. He'd been in and out of shelters ever since, scraping by however he could. I'm not a bad kid, Jason said quietly, almost to himself. I don't know what else to do sometimes. Elon listened, his usual quick wit and sharp insights replaced by silence. For all his achievements, sending rockets to space, revolutionizing electric cars, this was a world he didn't fully understand. And yet, it felt more urgent, more real than anything he'd ever faced. When they reached the shelter, a small, run-down building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign, Jason stopped. This is it, he said, his voice tinged with both relief and embarrassment. Elon looked at the building, then back at Jason. You're doing the best you can, he said, his voice firm. And that matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Jason nodded, his eyes welling up again. Thank you, he whispered. That night, Elon couldn't sleep. Jason's story replayed in his mind, intertwining with the faces of the crowd, the officer, the woman who had stepped forward. He thought about the millions of kids like Jason, kids who didn't have a voice, who lived in the shadows of a society that often turned a blind eye. For the first time in years, Elon felt truly powerless. No amount of technology could fix this overnight. But maybe, just maybe, there was a way to start. He grabbed his laptop and began typing. By dawn, the framework for a new project was taking shape. One that wasn't about Mars or AI, but about Earth and the people who needed help the most. Elon had launched a massive initiative called Project Uplift. The goal? To build community centers across cities, where kids like Jason could find food, shelter, education, and hope. It wasn't just charity, it was empowerment, a chance for people to rewrite their stories. The first center opened in Jason's neighborhood. It was a sleek, welcoming building, solar-powered, with classrooms, dormitories, and a cafeteria that smelled of fresh-baked bread. Kids were laughing, learning, and dreaming. Things Jason once thought were beyond his reach. Jason was there, standing on the stage next to Elon, clutching a microphone with trembling hands. The crowd was huge, reporters, locals, and curious onlookers. But Jason wasn't afraid this time. He wasn't the scared kid running from a misunderstanding anymore. My name is Jason, he began, his voice steady. A few weeks ago, I was just another face in the crowd, another kid trying to survive. But someone saw me. Someone listened. He glanced at Elon, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. Jason took a deep breath. This center isn't just a building. It's hope. It's a reminder that people like me aren't invisible. We matter. The crowd erupted into applause, but Jason barely heard it. For the first time in his life, he felt seen. As the months passed, Jason's life changed in ways he'd never imagined. He went back to school, joined a robotics club, and even started teaching younger kids at the center. He'd always loved tinkering with things, and now he had the tools and guidance to turn that love into something real. Elon kept in touch, checking in on Jason's progress. But more than that, he made sure Project Uplift expanded, city by city, state by state. Each center carried a plaque near the entrance with the same inscription. Jason stood in front of a classroom, holding a small circuit board. This, he told the group of wide-eyed kids, isn't just a piece of plastic and wires. It's possibility. With this, you can create anything. Robots, machines, even a future you never thought was possible. The kids leaned in, hanging on his every word. Jason smiled, remembering the first time someone had believed in him. After class, he walked outside and found Elon waiting by the steps. "Mr. Musk," Jason said, his face lighting up. Elon waved him over. "Just Elon," he said, smiling. "How's it going?" Jason sat beside him, looking out at the bustling playground where kids were laughing and chasing each other. "It's amazing," Jason said. "They're amazing." Elon nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're amazing too, Jason. Don't forget that." Jason looked at him, the weight of those words sinking in. "Thank you," he said quietly. Elon stood, patting Jason on the shoulder. "Don't thank me. Just keep going. The world needs people like you." As Elon walked away, Jason watched him go, a spark of determination lighting in his chest. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. And for the first time, he could see a future, a bright, limitless horizon where anything was possible. Jason stood up, looking out at the kids running around the center he once only dreamed of, and he smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. What would you have done if you were in the shoes of the officer at that life-altering moment? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories.